Welcome back to another video, and today we are talking about the importance of alignment in writing. Whoa. And this is Pro-Lit-Fic, where creativity and business intersect to create the life of your dreams. Now, today, let's talk a little bit about alignment, right? And what that actually means. But before we do, like the video, even though you just showed up, if you like looking at my face, hit the like button. It does make a big difference and helps the algorithm. And drop a comment down below, especially any questions. Take notes. We're about to jump into it. So the importance of alignment in writing. Now, what do I mean when I say alignment, right? Now, as you guys know, alignment just means having things in a line, in order, right? And there are three fundamental planes of existence, you could basically say. Three fundamental planes where you intersect with who you are and the world around you. And so most of the time I use there's a lot of different words to call this. So a lot of times we would call this like the spiritual plane, right? Spirit, your mind, and then your physical, right? Or the body. Now, I want to use another word because this is some words. These are essentially the same things, but these are breaking down the different planes of existence just so you'll understand how it is we're intersecting, right? And you might ask, well, how does this have anything to do with writing? Check it out. Don't worry, you're going to get some. That's a Nero knowledge, by the way. That's not me. So spirit, another word for it is we could call it the causal plane. And this is causal, meaning this is the plane where things actually happen, right? The mind is just, you could call this the astral, where now we start being able to project and start seeing things in a more concrete fashion. And the physical plane is exactly that, just the physical plane, right? It's always the same. Now, as you distribute reality, most of creation happens here in the causal plane. And then in the astral, we drop down to about 18%, or the mind, and then about 2% happens here in the physical. Doesn't mean the physical is not important, but it does mean that most of it is starting up here in the causal plane. Now, how do we interact with this causal plane? And that's what we're going to talk about today in alignment. Because oftentimes, I talk with a lot of people, and you guys got to understand this whole writing thing. A lot of like what people think is like, oh, it's so difficult. It's so hard to like build anything, like make money or work out or da 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 da. This is not true. Most of the challenges in your life, most challenges are not intellectual, but in fact are emotional. And especially for a lot of you writers out there, where you guys really struggle with, because I've talked with dozens, hundreds of writers at this point and worked with dozens of you guys. And again, the biggest block, the biggest thing that gets in your guys' way is this emotional capacity. And this all starts in the causal plane. Because this is how we interact with it, is our emotional charge, right? And so based off of how we're feeling about our lives, based off of how we're feeling about our work, how we're feeling about ourselves, that will determine and change the nature of what it is we are creating. And that will knock us in or out of alignment, right? So if we want to create a story about joy, like a fun teen romance, right? We have to be steeped in those feelings. We have to know what the feelings of a teen romance are. So if we don't know what those feelings are, or we're so divorced from that feeling that we don't even know how to tap into it, we're not going to be able to write it. And 95% of the time, that's what's happening. And it's crazy because so many people, especially the perfectionists among you guys, a lot of you guys will get stuck here in the middle. I was actually discussing this with a woman the other day. By the way, check out my wait list down below if you guys want to work with me. I work with clients right now, and I'm actually looking for 3 particular case studies so that I can work through a program that I'm working with. Heavily discounted, of course. So go check out the link in below and we can talk about it. If you want to take your game to the next level and actually be a full-time creator, integrating your business and what you do for a living and what you love to do. So anyway, coming back to this perfectionism. So in my waitlist, if you're watching the video now, I have little tags in the waitlist where I won't capitalize certain letters and I'll capitalize others, and I'll do things like I put one word. I won't do it because I want you guys to look at it yourselves, but I'll make writing errors, and I make those errors because I want to see how fast people get stuck on it. Because oftentimes I found people who are stuck in perfectionism, they're very difficult to help in terms of coaching because there's a lot of emotional blockage and there's very little, like, as a coach, I can help people with this sort of causal plane, but so much of this here has to do with like trauma and honestly therapy. And because there are some people I'm more equipped to help than others, but especially in terms of like psychology, when this is not really right, the perfectionism in the mind gets very, very difficult to block. And then more so, I've just come to see that where our blocks and where our focus is and our attention is where we lose, right? And a lot of times, there's a lot of people who are stuck in their head, they're stuck in their minds, and this is where they get blocked. And they're trying to make their writing intellectual, but it's not. This is not an intellectual exercise most of the time. And so that soul, that creator vibe, that thing that really takes everything to the next level, that starts from going within, deep within, in the causal plane, going into the spirit, which is a place of emotions, not a place of thinking and thoughts. And so, in terms of finding alignment, I'm going to break it down and keep it super simple, because you have these 3 planes in which we kind of create and build everything, right? So now we have to take those planes and distributing it 80, 18, and 2, or 80, 20, however you want to break it down. So in the mind and the physical, it's just about 20% of your focus, and then 80% in the causal, which is this emotional capacity, to really find alignment. It's super simple. All we have to do is master our attention. And you might say, like, what do you mean? Like, it's that simple. Master your attention. A lot of times when people see a mistake and you get pulled off by it, that's, for instance, if you see a mistake and you get pulled off by someone's mistake, this is a really good indicator that you have probably strong attention to detail, but you're not really good at mastering your attention, because your attention is focused on the external, which is still in the physical 2%, right? So 2% of your reality is what you're focusing on. And it's actually smaller than that if you look at percentages. I just do this in terms of how we actually create and cause effects. But in terms of like your actual focus, your attention is hyperfixated on 2% while you're missing the big picture. And I would say this is the biggest difference between a lot of creatives and business people. Because contrarily enough, right, whereas I think writers and a lot of creators I've found are very deeply concerned with the external, a lot of the best business people and entrepreneurs I've seen are very internally focused, right? So because they're internal, they're focusing most on their emotional state, and their attention is going there. And you got to understand, when you have an external emotional state, the need that is created is called a need for validation. And if you want to, and it is very difficult to create anything original when we are constantly seeking validation for our efforts. This is why perfectionists get caught up and they start making up all these reasons why they can't write or why they can't do anything, because their attention, which they have not mastered, is so focused on the external, this tiny little 2%, that attention being externally focused is now seeking validation. And this is one of the biggest indicators of where someone is at in their journey. If someone is still seeking validation, you know that they're still very much in the early part of their journey, because as we develop and we become better and are able to move, we start to focus and become proactive. And that allows us to really focus in on our emotional state. So when you see someone is internally focused, their emotional state creates what we call awareness. And one of the things I've come to find, I actually was talking with someone the other day, and they had a degree and they were an editor and stuff like that, and they were commenting to me about like my writing and things like that. And I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for making me aware of that. But there were some of these decisions I had made, and they kept insisting on some things, and there was a lot of projection. And what was very interesting is that in spite of everything this person knew about writing, they were so unable to do anything with it because they were seeking validation. Validation has just become their base mode of how they received attention, that they lacked any level of awareness. And they were so completely blind. And it's very interesting if you're noticing that you're really, really struggling to move forward with your writing and you're constantly like, oh, I'm doubting back and forth. Ask yourself, am I more motivated by validation or am I motivated by awareness? And one of the biggest reasons you'll know is what happens, why is the reason you share your work? This is going to be one of the biggest answers to where you're at. If you share your work because you want people to tell you how good it is, or you share your work because you want it to improve, this is the biggest difference in whether or not you are internally motivated or externally motivated. And if you are externally motivated, you will be clouded and struggle with perfectionism. While internally motivated, you will have awareness and you'll also have your own battles. It's not that you're clear of it, but you'll actually get stuff done. You'll actually move the needle. Well, if you're externally focused, you're going to be stuck forever. And so we see that in terms of alignment, you first have to put first things first. And that first thing you have to put is that you need to be internal, external. And recognizing that when you move internally, then what happens is this, is you build an internal mode, and then through that internal mode, you now are building awareness. And then through that awareness, you create something externally. And then from that external creation, you get validation one way or the other. But that validation is only coming not because you're looking for it, but it's coming to build your awareness. And what happens is as that builds your awareness grows, and so does your external creation. And then from your external creation, you get validation. But validation is no longer validation when you're doing it from this place. It becomes feedback. And then when you're able to work within that feedback loop because you're internally motivated, now you're cooking, now you're in alignment, and now you're creating. And that first just starts with mastering your attention. And all you have to do is focus in what is my emotional state and where's my awareness at. And if you can learn to master your emotional state, writing, everything, all the creation you need becomes very simple. It's not this very complicated subject. Because it's so simple, I think a lot of people get thrown off by it. But it's quite simple. Simply master your attention. And from that, your emotional state will build towards your external reality. And your external reality will create feedback and validation, which, if you in turn stay internally motivated, will build your awareness. And from that awareness, you can then continue to build your external reality. But it all starts from being internally motivated. And so that is the loop. Hope you guys are doing well and that makes sense. Drop a link down, drop a comment and a like down below if that was some helpful to you, as well as any comments, concerns, thoughts that you guys have on the lessons. I always like to hear it, trying to interact with people. Hope all is well. Stay happy, stay healthy. Peace.